And we are live. Welcome back to today's national weather forecast. We're going to be talking about a lot of the same stories as yesterday, but there are some major changes with each one. So we got that big ice storm that we were covering yesterday, stretching all the way from Texas up into Virginia and dropping some decent snow in select locations. Big change in the amount of snow and where that heavy snow is going to fall. So that's one of the big things we're talking about today. We're also going to be going over the multiple systems that'll be moving through the west. You can see heavy rain in California, heavy snow building in through Oregon and Washington. Montana's getting some of that snow as well, and then parts of Montana into the Midwest is where we have that Arctic blast of cold air, and that has some big changes in the story too. Yesterday, especially when it comes to when this blast is ending, yesterday's forecast is certainly not what today's is going to be showing. So that's some of the big stories we're going to be talking about. That is pretty much proof in itself that you should always check to make sure this is in fact my most recent forecast, because I do these every day, and as you're going to find out today, weather models change pretty fast. So it's always good to make sure you're actually watching the most recent information. So let's just dive in and go over the national overview and a broad look at the big stories that we're going to be talking about. So the big one, I think, is that ice storm that is going to be pushing in from Texas all the way into Virginia, and you can see it's actually already begun. Early this morning, we were getting that ice in Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, and then it almost eases up for a second, and then it comes back with a vengeance Thursday morning. We get that extreme, it is pretty extreme ice right there. That's where you could be picking up maybe half an inch of ice in total. So that's certainly something to look at. We're going to take the local look into Arkansas, especially right there. Where it's changed is yesterday that bullseye of ice was right over Oklahoma. Oklahoma looks like you're still getting some ice, but not as much as yesterday. Now that has moved over into Arkansas. We're still getting that heavy rain throughout the southeast. We'll check out the totals for that one. But then this is where the story I think has changed the most. It's with those snowfall totals for West Virginia and Virginia. You can see not nearly as much snow looks like it's going to be falling throughout the course of this storm. And there's a pretty key reason for that, which I'll show in a second. First, I want to just look at the west here as well, where we're going to have a system pushing in Thursday afternoon, going to bring some heavy rain to Northern California, and then continually drop snow into the Cascades for what seems like the next 4 or 5 days. It's just going to be light snow, nothing spectacular in the Cascades when it comes to the snowfall rates, but we're going to be picking it up for such a long period of time that your totals could end up being in the 2 to 3 foot range. And you can see there's a bigger storm coming this Saturday and Sunday for the West Coast. So we're going to have to keep our eye on that as we get closer to that actual day. Now, the big thing I want to show before we get into the Arctic blast is just the broad overview of where that precipitation is going to fall that I was just showing. So with this, ignore the northern states here. We'll look at the snowfall map in a second. This is more to check out the southeast and California for some of the rainfall totals that we can expect through this next weekend. You can see parts of Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina could be getting 2 to 3 inches of rain with the system that's moving through right now and the system following in behind that. On the coast of California through the coast of Oregon, that's where you're going to be getting more rain than that snow. Looks like some decent rain there, maybe 2 inches in some places with maybe an inch around the Bay Area. So that looks like the bullseyes for our biggest rain right there. Let's look at where our bullseyes for the biggest snow are. Let's click through. Yep, you can see how much that has changed from yesterday's forecast. Yesterday, West Virginia and Virginia were showing over a foot of snow, maybe 14 to 15 inches of snow. And now you can see there's maybe a bullseye in West Virginia getting 6 to 8 inches, possibly 12 in very select locations, but significantly diminished from what the models were showing for the last 5 days. For the last 5 days, they were in perfect agreement that this was going to be a major storm. But something happened, which I'll show you in a second. But first, I just want to point out Cascades getting that heavy snowfall over the next few days, working into Sunday. Like I said, not extreme snowfall rates, but it's just continuing to fall nonstop for about 5 days straight here. So you're going to be able to pick up maybe 2 to 3 feet of snow. In California and the Sierras, we're likely to get 1 foot of snow. It's not looking like it's going to be that big storm we had a couple weeks ago, but it's certainly enough snow to go have fun skiing or snowboarding over Valentine's weekend with. Now, the reason that storm for West Virginia and Virginia, now is the time I'm finally going to explain why I think this storm basically, it's still going to be significant. We're still having that ice stretching all the way from Texas to Virginia. Definitely still the top story for the day and what we have to spend the most time looking at. But as you can see, those massive snowfall accumulations over a foot, foot and a half throughout West Virginia and Virginia are no longer showing up. So it's interesting to see why. And here's what I'm thinking. It starts with this trough right here over California. We actually got some surprise rain yesterday. I went on a hike yesterday and got rained on. Complete surprise, which is kind of ironic. It was that little trough right there. And I think that might tell part of the story. That dipped down a little more into California than was originally expected. And then, as it continues to dip down right here, this is the trough that is eventually going to become the ice storm that moves through Texas all the way to Virginia. Watch what happens as I click right here. The bottom of it just falls off and moves off into Mexico. So by the time it gets to West Virginia and Virginia, it's basically flat. If you want to see a strong storm, well, this isn't exactly a strong storm here, but when the isobars, lines of constant pressure, are more vertical like this, that's when you have a stronger storm that moves through. And that isn't exactly a great example because this isn't actually a very vertical trough right here, but you get the picture. When it starts to flatten out like that, that's when there's not much energy left in the system. It doesn't have a lot of, it's called vorticity, to drop those heavy snowfall amounts that we were seeing previously. Previously, when that little trough was still a part of this system as it moved through West Virginia and Virginia. Now you can see by the time it moves through there, not much energy left. So I'll just show that one more time because it's a pretty interesting graphic to look at. Trough comes through. It was just going to come in, pull in moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, pull down cold air, drop all over a foot of snow right there. But the bottom just falls off and goes into Mexico. We lose a lot of the energy, and it's also going to cause the storm to move through faster. So before, it was kind of stalling out over the region, moving slowly. Now, since it's all just flat, the storm appears to be moving off much sooner than was originally expected. Now in the west as well, we have another little system pushing in Friday morning, and then another one behind that. So a lot of things to look at. One other thing that to always keep our eye on is that blob of Arctic air that you see just sitting right above the Midwest. And this is another part of the story that's had some major changes from yesterday. This map, I think, shows it better of what's going on. Why is this blast of cold Arctic air coming in? You're probably feeling it right now if you live in any of the northern states, the plains, or the Midwest. And it's because of this. You can see it's not exactly labeled here, but hopefully you can see these winds turning around in a circle right here. You know it's a low pressure because they're going counterclockwise. But the important part is to think about the bottom part of this low, because that's what affects the United States. It's pulling that air from west to east. And then down here in the US, we have that little trough and low pressure system. Even though it's not as big as it was supposed to be yesterday, we do still have that. And you know, winds flow into a low pressure. They flow from high to low. So that is pulling some wind in as well. So it's really these two systems working together, and you can see on this map that it is literally pulling that cold air down. And where these isobars, the lines of constant pressure, are closest, that's where you have the greatest pressure gradient, which it means that's where your winds are going to be the strongest. You see that's right over Montana, and that's the reason Montana is getting the majority of this cold air. 30 to 50 degrees below average temperatures right there, because that's where the cold air being pulled down by these two forces is the strongest. So if we want to actually look at exactly what I was saying, you can see how it matches that map perfectly. There's our little trough, our low pressure system right there that's pulling the cold air down, and you can see how that cold air has been pulled down. And then you can also see exactly what I was saying, where Montana has the strongest winds, so that's where the cold air is being pulled down the most. Well, that's exactly what this shows. This shows how far off of the average temperature are you. In Montana, looks like we're 44 to 50 degrees below average in one of the states that's already one of the coldest in the entire country. So I'll show the actual temperatures in a second, but you can see 40 to 50 degrees below average in Montana. Now, we were feeling that throughout the Midwest and the plains yesterday and the day before, some of those 30 to 40 degree below average temperatures. You can see throughout the day today, we're just getting down to 20 to 25, which is still significant. That would still be a story in itself that we're 25 degrees below average through the Midwest and plains, but it's certainly not as bad as it was 2 days ago. Well, you can't get too comfortable, because the one part of this story that is staying the same is that second blast of cold Arctic air that will be pushing through at the start of this weekend. You can see it starts to creep in, and this will be getting pulled in by another low pressure system. You can see that starts to come in Saturday, and then it just comes back with a vengeance throughout the weekend and into the start of next week. We're getting 30 to 50 degrees below average, stretching all the way down from Texas up to the United States-Canada border through Minnesota, still in Montana, who seems like they're getting this the entire time. They don't get any relief from the cold. Seems like they're just always 40 degrees below average. But you can see that's going to fill in. So your Valentine's weekend is certainly going to be cold, 30 to 50 degrees below average as that second blast of cold air comes in. Now here is where the story changes from yesterday. Yesterday, around Monday, it looked like this cold air was just going to dissipate, weaken across the country, and just kind of spread out and go away. Finally, it seems like it's been here all week. Now, it looks like as we get all the way into Tuesday, that cold air is still sticking around, still 30 to 50 degrees below average all the way down into Texas. And then you can see it's still in select locations as we move all the way into Wednesday. And then, again, this is where the models have changed from yesterday. It looks like all the way again into the 18th, the 19th, the 20th, that cold air, and that's as far out as the forecast goes. This is now all the way into the 19th. And we're still 35 to 40 degrees below average through a lot of the Midwest, working all the way down into Texas. So that is where the Arctic blast forecast has changed. Yesterday looked like it was finally just settling and going away on Monday. Now it looks like it's going to be with us through this next Friday. So that is certainly a change, and we'll have to keep our eye on it, because if that much can change in one day, who's to say what's going to happen in tomorrow's forecast? So let's look at the actual temperatures that we're feeling. You can see Montana there. Like I said, where those isobars are the closest, that's where we have the strongest winds pulling in that cold air, and that's where the coldest air is. Minus 20 in Great Falls there. And then Minnesota getting a little blast of that cold air as well, getting minus 10, minus 13 throughout the day Thursday. So this is kind of where it starts to ease back a little bit. We get a little bit of a break. Majority of the Midwest is at least above zero. It's certainly still very cold. Remember, we're still 20 degrees below average, but at least not 50. Now, where it starts to come back in is as we get into Friday, into Saturday, this purple blob of cold air, you're going to see it push back in. One thing I want to point out here, though, Great Falls on Thursday is showing negative 33 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's just straight up temperature. So when you're mixing that with some winds, that's actually going to feel like negative 50. So watch as I continue to click through here. It's kind of holding up into just Montana, North Dakota, Minnesota. And then as we get into Saturday, you're going to see those below zero temperatures start to spread out. And especially as we get into Sunday, you can see that's where the highs officially moved right over Minnesota. We now have below zero temperatures all the way down through Denver, Nebraska, Iowa, Wisconsin, all looking like they'll be below zero. St. Paul, minus 15, Rapid City, minus 10. Montana, I can't even see what you guys are at this point. Actually, it looks like the cold air, for the most part, is moving over into the Midwest, so Montana might actually finally start to get out of it as we work into Monday and Tuesday. And then, like I said, it's sticking around. That's the big change in the forecast. It's being pulled in by this low pressure system you see right there, staying below zero even as we get into Tuesday and Wednesday. So that's going to be what we're watching as we move forward. What ends up happening with that Arctic blast of cold air. So you can see that there is actually a warning being caused by that Arctic blast. We have the wind chill warning. So it's not just a freeze warning. Right there is where we have our freeze warning, that ice storm warning. But right here is a wind chill warning. And the reason for that is the temperatures are 20 to 30 degrees below zero in some cases, but at least 30 to 40 degrees below average. And then we're mixing it with some wind. So when you mix 20 degrees below zero with some wind, it's actually going to feel like it's negative 50 degrees. So that's why we have the wind chill warnings up here through Montana, North Dakota, Minnesota, and then wind chill advisories through 10 different states. And one thing to think about is it doesn't seem like that, sensational of a story, that it's just some cold air, right? But cold air can actually be dangerous. When it gets this cold, it can cause frostbite in only 10 minutes. So even though it might not be some tornado or hurricane or wildfire, cold air is something to take seriously as well. As you can see, we do have warnings here. We have warnings in some other places as well. Like I said, that ice storm warning, which kind of goes along with the cold air warning because it's the cold air that's allowing that ice to form all the way down here in Arkansas and Tennessee. That's what we're going to be looking at closely with that big storm, the exact timing, who's getting the ice, when are you getting the ice. And then also on this map, you see up here in the northwest, that's one of the parts of the story, I don't know if that made sense, that has certainly changed. They're getting a lot more snow than was previously predicted. So overall, I think a good way to look at our storms, the storms especially, not so much the freeze or the wind chill warning, but a good way to gauge your storm. Because these days you hear everybody's calling each storm a major snowstorm. And I'll admit, sometimes I'm even guilty of doing this, just calling everything a major storm because it looks like you're getting over a foot. That's why I like to show this map, because it really just kind of calms the sensationalism and shows you exactly what you need to see. You can see as we click into this ice storm, like I said, it's weakened. I was expecting to see some major impacts through West Virginia and Virginia because they were going to be getting over a foot of snow. That's why I was thinking it was going to be a major storm yesterday, because they were supposed to get maybe 15 inches throughout large portions of West Virginia and Virginia. As I showed in that map, the storm is weakened. Doesn't look like it's going to be anywhere near as big, but we are still going to have moderate impacts. So with moderate impacts, that still means you should take it seriously, but it's no longer the major or extreme impacts the previous models were making us believe it would be. But you can see where that's stretching all the way from Arkansas all the way up into Pennsylvania. And I will zoom in here because there is one little stretch of West Virginia that is expecting extreme impacts with this ice storm, snowstorm moving in. So if you live right there, you should certainly take the storm seriously. But overall, I would call it now a moderate storm. Where we also have a moderate storm is in Washington and Oregon. But this, I think, is for different reasons. This actually still looks like it's going to be pretty strong, but it's dissipated over a large portion of time. We're dropping maybe 2 feet to maybe even 3 feet of snow over the next week throughout the Cascades right here, but it's constant light snow. So there's no period where it's going to be extreme. It just seems like it's constant accumulation, which allows you to build up over a large period of time. So I think that would be a good place to direct our attention right now. Let's keep our eye on the west here as those systems come in. You can see throughout the day Wednesday, it looks like we're for the most part in the clear. And then that system starts to push in early Friday morning and late Thursday night as well. And possibly even early Thursday afternoon. I know I've just said many different times. Looks like the first little traces of snow will start pushing in Thursday afternoon. The bulk of the storm hits Thursday night into Friday morning. That's what I'm trying to say there. So you can see that has the potential to bring some heavy rain to California. And then, just like I said, constant accumulation of snowfall throughout the Cascades. Sierra is going to be getting some snow with that one as well. And then that one moves off. But notice the Cascades continue to pick up snow this entire time until the next system pushes through. That's going to be moving a little bit farther north than that previous system was just showing. You can see very northern California has that heavy rain there, as well as the coast of Oregon. And this one looks like it's actually going to be the stronger of the two storms. I don't think it's going to be a major winter storm like Orlena that we picked up 2 weeks ago, where it was dropping large amounts of rain and snow for 4 days straight. This one looks like it'll pack a punch as it moves through, but it's a quick mover. It's already gone. It's not going to sit over us for 5 days straight like Orlena did. But let's look at the timing when that second system moves through. That's Friday night into early Saturday morning. That second blast and the stronger of the two systems starts to push through there. So let's actually look at that. There's that little trough that actually brought some light rain yesterday. Ended up getting rained on, which I was not expecting. Very ironic. And then throughout the day today, you can see that little ridge build in. Should be nice throughout the day today. And then as we get into Thursday night into Friday morning, that's when that next system comes through. This one, as you can see, it doesn't look like a huge trough or a giant low pressure system, but it's something. It's going to go right over the Sierras, drop some snow right there, some rain to the Bay Area, and then it's gone. So it's a quick mover, doesn't look all that intense, but it'll give us some rain and snow, which is good when it comes to the drought. Then we have this second system in, which just by the looks of it, you can see it looks bigger than that previous one. But it also looks like it's more located to the north here. So that's why the largest impacts will be in the Cascades. And then that is going to deepen and move it across the country and possibly become a major storm for the eastern half of the country, but that's a different story. Let's actually just zoom into California to get a broad look of what's going to happen. You see that precipitation starting to creep in Thursday afternoon, and then it hits Thursday night into early Friday morning. That's when I think the strongest part of the system will be. And then the rain kind of calms down as you're probably waking up on Friday, and then just some heavy snow in the Sierras as we get into Friday around 7 a.m., and then it's gone. So that one's, like I said, a quick system. Second one comes in. Again, heavy rain along the coast, decent snowfall in the Sierras, working into some heavier snowfall in the Sierras, and light rain along the coast. That one moves in Friday night, and then that one is gone by Saturday night. So that's a quick mover as well. I think the best way to do it is just look at the local picture, what's going on. You see not much all day Wednesday, and then 10 a.m. Thursday, that's when that rain starts to show up. Then it really comes in by 4 p.m. Thursday. That's when the system is moved in. So between 10 and 4 Thursday, that's where we're getting heavy rain along the coast, some decent snow building into the Sierras. Some of the heavier snow starts to build in 10 p.m. on Thursday, and then the system is gone. Looks like we're actually getting over 0.2 to 0.5 inches per hour of snow on 4 a.m. Friday. So if you're a skier or snowboarder, this weekend might be nice up in Tahoe with that system right here, and then with the next one that's coming in 10 p.m. on Friday. Like I said, this looks like it's going to be the stronger of the two systems, with that heavy rain along the coast again and the decent snowfall throughout the Sierras. That turns into heavy snowfall as we get into Saturday morning, but then the rain is already easing up throughout the Bay Area and the rest of the coast here. Then that system's gone, so we're going to pick up snow in bursts. There's two systems coming in at two different times, dropping some rain and snow really fast and then moving out. Let's look at how much rain we're going to be getting. Let's just go through both those systems. Looks like in the northern coast, we're going to get 1.5 inches to possibly 2 inches. Around the Bay Area, more 1/2 inch to 1 inch if you're lucky. And then in the Santa Cruz Mountains, that's where we could be getting over 1 inch of rain, and I'd expect that as well. Then if we look at the snowfall forecast, let's just click through both of those systems to see what we get. Those locations where we saw the heaviest snowfall rates is where we could get the heaviest accumulated snowfall. Maybe 2 feet of snow building in right there. The entire strip, though, should be over 1 foot. So again, it should be a great weekend to go up to Tahoe or Mammoth or the rest of the Sierras to do some skiing and snowboarding over the long holiday weekend. And then the other aspect of all that rain and snow is it's great for the drought. As you can see, we still have exceptional drought in Northern California. I always think that's kind of a funny way to describe a drought as exceptional. That makes it sound like a good thing, but that means it's even more than extreme. So actually, let's go down there. I'm not absolutely sure I have that right. Nope. The light red right here is extreme drought. It's that dark red that's the exceptional drought. So that last big storm actually got us out of the exceptional drought. We were in that, and which is why I was thinking it just a couple weeks ago. And then Orlena, that atmospheric river, looks like it got us out of the exceptional drought. But we are still in extreme drought. So all that rain and snow that we're going to be picking up over the next few days, we're getting that 2 inches along the coast here. It looks like we'll be getting about 1/2 inch to 1 inch throughout this region. And then throughout the Sierras, we're picking up another foot of snow. That's certainly going to help with this picture as well. And I'll be sure to keep showing this throughout my forecast to see how this progresses as those systems continue to move through. You can see Oregon as well is also in that extreme drought, even up into Washington, just the sliver of the Cascades there. But good news for them, they're getting some of this great precipitation too, and they're actually getting even more than California. Throughout the day Wednesday, just like California, in the clear, and then as we get into Wednesday afternoon, we get the first little bits of snow building into Washington and Montana. Now, as I click through this, keep your eye on the Cascades right here, because this is Wednesday night, and the Cascades are starting to get some snowfall. Watch this region in particular to see how long they stay in that snowfall. So it's before that first system really moves through. Then they get some more snow still covered in that snowfall. That one eases up. You can actually see it move off into Montana and Wyoming here. That system's gone, but even though it's gone, they're still picking up snow this entire time, and then the next system moves in right behind it. So there wasn't one period where the Cascades right here weren't getting snow, and that's why their totals are going to be so great with these two systems. You can see that heavy rain along the coast. That's going to help with the whole drought situation in Oregon, and then the snowfall through the Cascades will certainly help as well. And it looks like we're finally in the clear, or almost in the clear. Wow, this actually goes out almost even longer than I was thinking. So this is Wednesday. We do get a little clear throughout the Cascades, but then another system pushes in right behind it towards the start of next week. So lots of systems to follow in the west. Going to be interesting to see how those end up developing. Now again, keep your eye on the Cascades here as I click through. They're just, every time I click, they get more and more snow because they're just constantly accumulating more and more. So overall, by this time next week, those areas that were constantly in snowfall, even though it was light snow, since they were picking it up nonstop, that's where you can get 2 to 3 feet of snow throughout the entire mountain regions of Oregon and Washington. Then in Idaho, looks like we're getting 1.5 feet. Montana, looks like you're getting 4 to 8 inches, which is actually more than yesterday's model was showing. And that's also what changed from yesterday's model. Yesterday's model, they had actually reduced the snowfall. Now it looks like that second system is going to be a little bit stronger than previously anticipated. So that's why we're back up to 2 to possibly 3 feet of snow throughout the Cascades. And then, like I just said, snowfall totals for Idaho and Montana have ticked up a little bit too as well with that stronger second system. The other story going on for Montana is the cold air that they're dealing with. And that's actually not just for Montana. That's a large stretch of the northern parts of the country working into the plains, and then pretty soon all the way down into Texas. That's the blast of cold Arctic air that we've been talking about for the last week. And you can see it's officially here. It has been here for a couple days, but it's still here. That's the wind chill advisory stretching through Montana, North Dakota, Minnesota, or that's the warning. The light blue is the advisory. So that's where you really have to take it seriously. And that's because the cold blast of Arctic air. You can see that great on this map. This shows temperature anomalies. How far off of the average are you? You can see Montana 40 to 50 degrees below average. Throughout the Midwest and the center of the country, we're still 25 degrees below average, but that's actually better than we were seeing 2 days ago when portions of Minnesota and Iowa were 40 degrees below average. So it's actually eased up here a little bit, but you'll see there's a second wave of this Arctic blast moving in towards the start of this weekend. So it's still kind of eased up right here, and then as we get into Friday, I count Friday as the weekend, that's where it starts to creep back in, and then it really pushes in Saturday, so the real weekend. That's where this next blast comes through. It's being pulled in by a low pressure system going all the way from Montana through Nebraska, and then you'll soon see it spreads out throughout the Midwest all the way down into Texas, 30 to 50 degrees below average there. So those wind chill advisories are most likely going to be spreading out to even more states as we get into this weekend. That's a good thing to keep in mind when it comes to your Valentine's Day plans. Now, the system that's driving all this is this low pressure system up here. You know it's a low because you can see the winds actually turning counterclockwise. So on the bottom of that low, the part that's bringing this cold air in, you can see that low, because of the circulation, is bringing that cold air west to east. Then down in the US, we have that trough that's causing the ice storm that we're going to be talking about in a few minutes here. That trough is a low pressure, so winds flow into the low pressure, so that's pulling down this cold air as well. You can see it's strongest right over Montana, where those lines of constant pressure are closest together. That's where you have the highest gradient and you get the strongest winds. That's why Montana is the coldest right now, 40 to 50 degrees below average. With the wind chill, it actually feels like it's 50 below zero. And then that's just going to continue to be the case as we move forward. And the big change in the forecast is when this Arctic blast is going to end. It was supposed to end on Monday. It was supposed to just disappear and go off, but now it looks like we have this stronger low pressure system than was originally expected, moving through, digging down, strengthening, and that is going to do the same thing the low is doing right now. That's going to be continuing to pull that cold air down. So that is the big change in the forecast. The strength of that system looks like it'll be enough to continue this Arctic blast happening. And then that actually might turn into its own major storm, so we're going to have to keep our eye on that. But you can see that cold air continuing throughout next Tuesday and into Wednesday, which is different than the forecast was showing as of yesterday. If we actually want to look at some of the temperatures we're dealing with, perfectly shows Montana, where we have the strongest wind pulling in that cold air. That's where you're negative 20 degrees, which means with the wind chill, that's where it feels like it's negative 50. And then you can see throughout majority of the Midwest, especially throughout the majority of the Midwest, I wanted to say that you're at least above zero, but it looks like Minnesota and large parts of Wisconsin are in fact below zero as we work into tonight and tomorrow morning. So you guys are still feeling that really cold air, especially Montana, North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin. That's where you're really not easing up. Where you are above zero at least, you're still 20 below average, but at least above zero is throughout central parts of the state into Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. Now, like I said, there's that second blast of cold air, and you can see it start to push in as we get into Saturday and Sunday and Monday. You're going to see this purple air start to get pulled down farther south, and just, it almost looks like smoke pouring over the region. You can see now those below zero temperatures are stretching all the way down into New Mexico and Texas, and places like St. Paul, you're minus 20. Rapid City, minus 8. Green Bay right there, minus 15 towards the start of next week. So that second blast of cold air might actually be stronger than the cold air we're getting right now. And then this actually perfectly shows it too. There's that low pressure system. Think about the counterclockwise circulation. So right here, that's where the winds are pulling that cold air down all the way into Texas, where we're below zero this time next week. So this is just a broad picture of everything I was just talking about. It just shows you what the temperature anomaly is going to be over the next 2 weeks as an average. You can see all the way down into Texas, up into the Midwest. That's where we're going to have the system sticking around the longest, where that low just brings in the cold air and then it sits there for a number of days next week, 30 to 40 degrees below average. Looks like Montana's finally going to be getting out of the negative 20 to negative 30 temperatures next week, but it's still going to be below average temperatures there. So the big thing that I just want to say again is with that wind chill warning, that's where the temperatures might just be minus 20 or minus 30, but with the wind, it actually feels like it's minus 50. So with that wind chill warning, it's possible to get frostbite in only 10 minutes of being outside. So you do have to take that kind of thing seriously. Now, the next system, or the next thing to talk about here, and you might have been looking at every single time I show this warning map and wondering about, is the major ice storm. And that is the top story of the day. As you can see, it's stretching. This winter weather advisory in purple is stretching all the way from Texas up into Pennsylvania. And then that ice storm warning is from Arkansas up almost into West Virginia right there. That's where we have the winter storm warning, just in that select location where we'll still be picking up some of the good snow. But like I said at the beginning of this video, there has been a major change to what the models were showing with this storm yesterday. This part of it looks still pretty similar. We have that ice and rain building into Texas and Oklahoma. This is where it starts to change. Yesterday, it was showing that bullseye of ice was right over Oklahoma. Looks like Oklahoma's still getting some ice, but now the bullseye is right over Arkansas. The heavy rain, that's still the same. We're going to look at the totals right there, but then you can see it starts to move up through the Ohio Valley and into West Virginia and Virginia, and that's the biggest difference right there. Yesterday, we were seeing widespread snow, and then we were seeing a bullseye of heavy snow over West Virginia and Virginia for a decent amount of time. Now it looks like it's light snow for a short amount of time. And to really understand that, you got to look at the overall pattern. It starts as this little trough right here that moves across the country, and watch what happens. Now, in the past, this trough was moving through at a steady pace, dropping that heavy ice through Oklahoma, Arkansas, then the heavy snow to West Virginia and Virginia. Now, the bottom of this trough just breaks off right there. And that is why I believe the models are no longer showing that heavy accumulation of snow into West Virginia and Virginia. It's because we lost a large portion of this system. A lot of that energy, a lot of that strength, a lot of what was making this seem like it was going to be a major ice and snowstorm just falls off and goes off into Mexico. All that energy. And then you can see by the time it actually gets to West Virginia and Virginia, we're basically flat right there, looking at the lines of constant pressure. So that also shows you that it's not going to end up being a massive storm for Virginia anymore, because it doesn't even look like there is a storm there at this point. It's just going to be leftover moisture and cold air from what was drawn in earlier in the system. To explain that aspect, you can see right here, that's the trough right there. Not as big as it looked yesterday, but the features causing this storm are still the same, and it is still causing some widespread ice. So it certainly is still a important storm to look at, because there will still be some moderate impacts stretching all the way from Texas to Pennsylvania. But this explains what I was just showing, the overall mechanism driving this storm. We have the cold air being pulled into this low pressure system. That's pulling that cold air down. And then we also have wind getting pulled into the pressure system from the Gulf of Mexico. That's what's bringing the moisture in. So right along that boundary of where you get the cold air and the moisture is where you get the most precipitation. But that boundary is also important to see. Above it is where you might get some snow because you're below freezing. Below it is where you're going to get rain because you're above freezing. And right along the boundary is where you have to watch out for that ice. So that's something we're going to be looking at closely throughout this entire rest of this storm story as we follow it across the country. So let's just do that. Let's follow it as it moves across the country, and especially look out for where things have changed from what the forecast was showing yesterday. So right here, this still looks kind of similar. The low moves in, we start getting some ice throughout Texas and Oklahoma, and some light rain as well. Then it almost looks like it eases up for a second, and then it strengthens again. That's actually exactly what yesterday was showing, but where there's a difference is now the bullseye of ice is right over Arkansas, and Oklahoma, while they're still getting ice, doesn't look as bad as yesterday was showing. And then throughout Texas and large portions of the southeast is where we're still picking up that heavy rainfall. So that's a big thing we'll have to look at there. Just taking a closer look at everything I was just showing, there's that first little wave of the system where we get that ice, just light ice, maybe 0.1 inches per hour building into Texas and Arkansas. Then it seems like it eases up, and then it comes back early Thursday morning with the bullseye right over Arkansas, and then that heavy rain stretching all the way through Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi. So that's the two things I notice here, the heavy rain and the bullseye of ice. So let's just see how much rain we're going to be picking up. Looks like as we click through this system, parts of Texas could be getting 2 inches, as well as Louisiana and Mississippi. Select locations could be getting all the way up into 3 inches of rain. Majority of locations will be getting around an inch, it looks like. So that's what the rainfall forecast looks like. Let's take a closer look at that ice as it builds into Arkansas. You can see 6 a.m. this morning, it was already starting. That was that first little wave of the system. And then it seems like it eases up. We get some heavy rain as we get into 6 p.m. tonight. And then this is where the system has started to pull in some of that moisture from the Gulf of Mexico that I was just showing. This is where it's starting to move across. So more of that moisture is getting pulled into the storm. And that's what's allowing the storm to strengthen and give us some heavy rain as we get into 12 a.m. Thursday. Then at 6 a.m., that's where the other part of this plays a role. That's where the cold air starts being pulled down into Arkansas. So that is what's causing all that precipitation that falls to turn into freezing rain and ice. And you can see that's going to be most significant over Arkansas at 6 a.m. Thursday. I'm spending a large amount of time on this because this might actually be the major impact of this ice storm that we have over the next few days. Right here, 6 a.m. Thursday in Arkansas. That's where you're most likely going to want to have to watch out, because that could lead to a 1/2 inch of ice accumulating over that region. And then the storm is gone. So where did it go? Well, let's follow it back again. Here's where it forms. It's in the Gulf of Mexico. And then it briefly works its way up into the Kentucky, Tennessee area. So I think it'd be good to look at this region next. And again, while looking at this map, keep an eye out for that boundary. Up north, you get snow, then you get ice, and then below you get rain. So we start to get some of that snow working in actually early this morning. That's the first little traces of this system. Some decent snow falling in West Virginia right there. And then here's where it reorganizes, starts pulling in more moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. That's where we start getting the heavy rain and the heavy accumulation of ice. That's 6 a.m. Thursday morning right there. And then you can see this is when it starts building into Kentucky and Tennessee as well. One big difference that we're seeing on this is with this second pulse. Yesterday's forecast was still showing that second pulse of the storm. Like, just clicking back here, you see the first pulse, it eases up, and then you have the second pulse right there. With the second pulse yesterday, we were getting snow into the very southern parts of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. Doesn't look like that's going to be the case anymore. And I believe the main reason for that is because by the time the storm moves up here, the more northern portion has completely lost its energy, which I showed a few minutes ago with that 500 millibar map where you could see the bottom of the trough just fall off and move into Mexico. So not as much energy, and it doesn't look like the impacts will be as extreme throughout this region, although we still have that ice and heavy rain building in, so that's something to keep your eye out for. Now, where you're going to be getting that ice, again, I think this is a great way to look at it. It's right along that borderline. So where you're below freezing, that's where you'd be getting snow. Where you're above freezing, where it's green, that's where you're getting the rain. Right along that border is where you have to watch out for the ice. And you can see it's right where that last map was showing the ice, in that corner of Tennessee there, then working through Kentucky. So as I click through here, keep an eye out for where that borderline is. If you're within that border or close to it, you might want to keep an eye on the forecast and maybe continue to watch these videos as I do them every morning. Then let's also just see where that snowfall is going to fall. That's all with the first part of the system. Really what's moving through right now. We're getting an inch throughout Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, and then we'll focus on West Virginia and Virginia in a second. So just light snow there, and then watch how with the second part of the system, we don't pick up any more in the southern parts of the state like we were supposed to yesterday. Now, just taking a closer look at when this ice is coming in. See, 6 a.m. Wednesday, we were feeling some of this ice that we've been talking about, and that's when the snow was pushing in as well. Then that it does strengthen as we get into 6 a.m. Thursday. That's where Tennessee is getting maybe a half inch of ice buildup, widespread quarter of an inch, and in some locations 0.1 inches of ice. And then as we get into 12 p.m. Thursday and 6 p.m. Thursday, you can see that ice is still sticking around. So it looks like the key time to watch here is 6 a.m. Thursday for Tennessee and Kentucky. So let's back up again and now follow it as it goes to West Virginia and Virginia. So here it is, right off of Texas. This is when it starts pulling in some moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, pulling down some cold air, and then dropping some ice all the way through Arkansas, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Then here is where it starts dropping the snow into West Virginia and Virginia. But you can see it's not nearly as much as yesterday's model was showing. So what's the reason for that? Why does it seem like this isn't even going to be a major storm for West Virginia and Virginia anymore, when yesterday it certainly looked like it was going to be major? It was supposed to drop 1.5 feet of snow, and now it just looks like some light snow barely just grazing the region. So this is the reason. That trough that is actually the start of the storm brought some rain to California yesterday. That trough moves through, and then the entire bottom of it just falls off and goes to Mexico. You can think of that as the energy and strength of the storm. So by the time that little dip that's left gets to West Virginia and Virginia, there's still moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. There's still cold air being pulled down from the Arctic. So we are still going to get some snow and some ice and some rain, but it's not nearly as much as was originally predicted. You can see that on the regional map here. Still getting that snow, still getting the ice, still getting the rain. So it's still a storm to watch out for. We still have warnings in place, even some winter storm warnings and some ice storm warnings. So you still do have to keep your eye on this. I'm just emphasizing that it's not nearly as big as it was showing yesterday, as you could just tell as I click through here. So let's take a more local view of what I was just showing, because I think that's better to look at the timing of the event. The first snow is going to start building in 1 p.m. today. And then right along that border of where you're below freezing and above freezing, that's where you get snow in the northern parts of West Virginia and Virginia, and then rain in the more southern parts, and then ice right in between. And then it eases up, and then it comes back. So at this point, this actually still looks like a decent storm. This is 7 p.m. Thursday. That's where you're getting maybe 0.1 to 0.2 inches of snow per hour. You have some heavy, or not heavy ice. Actually, I guess it would be heavy, but maybe 0.5 inches of ice right there. And then that's going to move across. Let's see when that second blast comes in. Looks like it starts 1 p.m. Thursday, strengthens 7 p.m. Thursday, and then moves into eastern parts of Virginia 1 a.m. Friday. And it looks like North Carolina mostly staying in rain, Virginia mostly in snow, and then on the back end, some ice. So let's just look at the snowfall, total accumulated snowfall. This might be a disappointing map to show if you're a winter lover. It could be a great map to show if you were worried about the ice and this being a major winter storm that could possibly damage property. It all depends on outlook. So as we click through here, that's now what the map looks like. Just to remind you, yesterday, this whole area right here was getting 15 inches of snow. Now it looks like there's one bullseye in West Virginia that's still getting 6 to 8 inches. Roanoke could be getting 6 inches there, but widespread regions only getting 2 to 4 inches, possibly 6. Looks like, for the most part, 2 to 4 inches for most locations in West Virginia and Virginia now. So major change from what the models were showing yesterday. And I just want to show this one again because it's just such a perfect map to show why this storm seems to have weakened. It's the trough's coming through, and then the entire bottom just falls off and goes into Mexico. We lose that strength and energy that was going to make this a major storm, but it doesn't look to be the case anymore. So let's just take a wide view over the region. What's going to fall with that system? Overall, we'll be getting maybe 1 inch to 2 inches throughout Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. And then you can see that bullseye in West Virginia and one part of Virginia where we're getting 6 to 8 inches. Widespread, only 2 to 4. And then it does work its way into Pennsylvania as well, 1 to 2 inches up there. Now, I usually don't go this far into the forecast, but if you were looking forward to a big winter storm, way off in the forecast, there looks to be a major storm coming through towards the middle of next week. But actually, that's going to be more for the Midwest. So that's more if you're in the Midwest, that you'll have to stay updated with that one. So I always like to just show the winter storm severity index. This is a perfect map because sometimes it's easy to emphasize something being a major storm or an extreme storm, because at the end of the day, you want people to take these things seriously because weather does have some serious impacts. But I like to show this because it's just an unbiased view of what kind of impacts we can expect with this storm. As you can see, with the orange color here, that's where we're expecting moderate impacts. So that stretches all the way from Arkansas all the way to Pennsylvania. And I can just read what the moderate impact says here. It says, often threatening to life and property, some damage unavoidable, typically results in disruptions to daily life. So moderate damage or moderate impacts is still something to look out for, but it's certainly not the moderate or extreme that we would have been seeing if that trough had stayed intact as it moved through Texas. Now I will zoom in here because there was that location in West Virginia that was still picking up the large amounts of snow. That's where we do still have extreme impacts. So if you live around this area, that's where you want to be staying updated with local resources where they can explain the dangers much better than I can. So just the wide view of what we've been talking about throughout this video. We've got that ice storm warning going from Arkansas all the way up through Kentucky, and then the winter storm warning in West Virginia. Wow, that's a tongue twister. Winter storm warning in West Virginia, where we are still expecting some extreme impacts. So you do have to take this storm seriously. I know I've maybe been downplaying it because it seems like it's so much weaker than yesterday, but this is still the top story of the day. Along this stretch, we could be picking up 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch of ice, and right here, we're expecting extreme impacts. The other part of the country to take seriously is up here where we're getting that Arctic blast of cold air. Temperatures 20 to 30 degrees below zero in some locations, with that wind chill makes it feel like it's 40 to 50 below zero. So that's where frostbite can happen in 10 minutes. And that's another thing that we've been talking about, that Arctic blast of cold air. And it looks like that is going to continue to affect us for quite some time. It was supposed to go away on Monday, but that's a part of the forecast that's changed. Looks like it's going to be sticking around at least for the middle of the country in the Midwest through mid next week, possibly even longer. We also talked about that winter storm warning in Oregon and Washington. Doesn't look like there's any periods where it's picking up extreme snowfall rates. It's just picking up constant snowfall for 4 or 5 days straight. So you're able to pick up 2 to 3 feet total of rain right there. So just another view of a lot of the stuff I just said. We've got that ice storm going from Arkansas. It's already really begun, but then it looks like it's going to strengthen throughout Thursday morning. That's 6 a.m. Thursday morning. That might be the key time to watch out for this ice storm. And then it's starting to drop that snow into West Virginia and Virginia, also dropping 2 to 3 inches of rain throughout Texas and the southeast. Then in the west, we have one system coming in, bringing in heavy rain to California and the Oregon coast, and then over 1 foot of snow to the Cascades and Sierra. Then we have another system following right behind that, bringing in some more heavy snow to the Cascades and Sierra, and more heavy rain along the coast. Overall, I wouldn't call either of those major storms because they just move through so fast. It looks like we get some heavy accumulations, but then it moves through fast, which is kind of the best of both worlds. We get some of that great rain and snow that helps us with the extreme drought, but then it also doesn't lead to, or at least hopefully doesn't lead to extreme flooding where it's just constantly pouring for 5 days straight, like what happened with Orlena a couple weeks back. So as you can see, lots of big weather stories going on, and the theme of this forecast is how fast a forecast can change. The forecast yesterday was showing 1.5 feet of snow for West Virginia and Virginia. Now, large portions are going to be lucky to get 6 inches. Lucky depending on your perspective. So that's a good reason to always stay updated with the forecast. Watch the most recent and current information. To do that, you can subscribe to this channel where I do these daily forecast videos every single day. So thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good day.